This video is brought to you by Gamefly.com. You can rent 8,000 new releases and classics on most major systems, all delivered right to your mailbox. If you use this URL to sign up for a free 30-day trial, you can test out their service and help support my channel. The link is in the description, so go check it out. Today we'll be taking a look at Titanfall 2 on the PS4 and the Potato Masher. If you don't know, the Potato Masher is a $375 PC custom built in 2014 and designed to compete with the PS4 for the rest of its life cycle. The goal is not to pick on consoles, but to show that PC gaming can be just as good or better for the same money. This may also be useful information for anyone gaming on a budget PC who is considering buying this game. I've already reviewed Titanfall 2 on the Potato Masher Pro, my new side project that you can check out using the link in the description, so let's get to it. The only disclaimer for this review is that I turned the field of view up on the Masher. I normally don't do that for comparisons because it makes it harder to line footage up, but the narrow view was starting to bother me on both the Masher and the PS4, and I can change it on the Masher, so hopefully you guys can bear with me. In the Potato Masher Pro review, I said a lot of nice things about how well Titanfall 2 is optimized and how clean the image quality is on both the Masher Pro and the PS4 Pro. In what I fear will become a trend, the game has some significant reductions in image quality on the regular Masher and the PS4. To start, I'm running the game at 1080p and medium settings on the Masher and using the in-game frame rate targeting to dynamically reduce the resolution to stay at 60 FPS. If you're surprised by medium settings, here are the actual settings I'm using. You might wonder why I'm calling it medium when a lot of those settings are on low. Well, there aren't any actual presets, and most of these options you have to choose from off, low, or high, so low is the actual medium or middle setting. A few options are just low or high, and a few have additional options. None of this is a big deal when you can just max everything out like on the Masher Pro, but it can be a little frustrating when you're optimizing for a weaker system. According to Digital Foundry, the PS4 hits a maximum of around 1000p, which is better than just committing to 900p like many other games, but it's also odd to see a game with a dynamic scaler that can't hit a full 1080p. The PS4 also targets a locked 60 FPS with its scaler. You guys know I like resolution scaling when it's used well, and I definitely liked it on the Masher Pro and PS4 Pro in this game. However, in my opinion, the developers rely a bit too much on this one feature to manage performance at the expense of the overall presentation on lower-end systems. The Masher can't sustain 60 FPS at 1080p in every situation on any settings, and while, yes, it's a budget PC, I don't think that's the main problem. There just aren't enough graphics options to scale down to budget hardware without relying on dynamic resolution scaling, which as far as I can tell is the developer's intention. This does mean that even the lower settings look pretty good, but I'd still like to see a wider range of options for people who don't want to drop resolution all the time. The available options just let us go from decent to great, while ignoring the more extreme budget and baller segments of the gaming population who might like to run this on older systems or much higher end ones. This is also me being fairly critical of this particular issue, because I want to draw a little bit of light to it and I don't want developers to use this as a crutch for the simple reason of final output quality. Technically, the Potato Masher can play at 1080p, very high settings, and 60 FPS. Technically. But it's going to be scaling the resolution down very often to maintain 60 FPS, and sometimes the resolution has to drop to what looks like 720p or lower to keep the very high settings. The image looks very soft and blurred, so much like the PS4, I'm using lower settings that let me keep the resolution higher most of the time. Some scenes like this outdoors vista still do look pretty soft on both machines, but the overall image is at least presentably sharp without distracting drops and issues. The PS4 does look a little softer most of the time, which makes sense because at its best it's still running a slightly lower resolution, but it's close enough in all the scenarios I tested that I don't think it's a big difference. Unlike the Masher Pro, the Masher looks almost identical to the PS4 in every other respect. There's the same annoying blurry shadow maps, the same foliage pop-in, and most of the same effects and features. The only differences I could find were higher resolution sun shadows, slightly less visible aliasing, and a few random small shadow improvements in some scenes on the Masher. Other than that, both look good. I'm emphasizing the differences, but really both are very similar. The only other difference worth noting is during multiplayer. I've seen reports of micro stutter in multiplayer, so it could be that, but the Masher has a few more frame rate dips than the PS4. These are drops of only 3 to 4 FPS, and most of the time the frame rate is solid at 60, but the PS4 is more stable. The game didn't feel like it was micro stuttering to me, so my theory is that the PC's resolution scaler is jumping back and forth more often. This could just be my fault for not having a few settings as dialed in as the PS4 version, or it could be how the scaler functions. I didn't notice any drops when I removed the scaler and locked the frame rate lower to compensate, but it's hardly conclusive proof, so if you're having issues, it might be worth a quick test. Now, I'm not going to test higher frame rates like I normally would because the game doesn't max out at 60 FPS without resolution scaling, so there's no point. I can always just keep dropping the resolution. But let's take a look at other resolutions. There's not much point trying to play Titanfall 2 at 1440p. Sure, the Masher can do it, but it's going to drop the resolution so often that it really isn't any better than 1080p. If the resolution is constantly changing, that inconsistency is going to be noticeable and annoying. So let's look at a different situation. Here I've set the maximum resolution to 900p and the graphics to about the high equivalent. The picture will be a little softer, but the resolution should downscale less often and the overall graphics level might be a little higher. Is it better looking than the PS4? Well, you can decide for yourself, but personally I'm not sure. I've been gaming at 1050p or 1080p since about 2008, so I usually consider that to be my bare minimum, and I'm really just not used to dropping below 1080p in any games. I normally game at 4K, I obviously like the clarity that comes with high resolution, so the only time I'm playing at sub 1080p is on my consoles. Still, this is an alternate option for anyone who wants it. PC gaming is all about choices, and if you have a budget PC like the Potato Masher, you're going to frequently make trade-offs. I did test unlocked frame rates, but the experience wasn't as consistent as I'd like. The resolution scaler was off, but the frame rate kept dropping to 60 and then jumping back to its normal range of 80 to 100. There aren't any 144Hz 900p monitors as far as I know, so this is a weird combination that likely no one else is even going to want to try. This is pretty much the definition of a tie. The Masher is running at a slightly higher resolution most of the time, but the PS4 is a little more consistent in multiplayer. Both platforms are so close that the differences are almost splitting hairs, so unless Sun Shadows alone are enough to make the decision for you, get the game on whichever platform you prefer. Neither platform is a loser, and the game is a polished experience that's definitely worth checking out. If you enjoyed this video, consider supporting this channel and the Potato Masher project by tossing me a few bucks on Patreon. It helps me test new games quicker and better. You can also hit the like button. Thank you for your support, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.